Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode in a what is this going to be? 10 minus 4, 7, a 7-part series, right?
Did you just do 10 minus 4 equals 7?
I'm thinking about how there's
It would be 7 because
there's
it's
6,
plus 1.
but we're doing
Yeah,
plus 1.
yeah.
So I did additional math.
You did the right math, but you said the wrong thing.
Yeah, I did the right math. I didn't finish the equation when I was verbalizing it. Anyway, there's going to be 7 episodes of this show, which is our review and recap and opinions and discussion and everything about Players, which is on Paramount Plus, the new League of Legends show. We will be talking about spoilers for each of these episodes. So if you have not seen the show, please do not watch this.
You can watch it. Who cares?
Turn this off and go watch. The
I don't
show's
care
really
if you
good.
get spoiled. There's not much to spoil. Well, there is.
Well,
I guess,
immediate
but
reactions before we get to the spoilers is just it's really good. We both think it's really good. We think if you like League of Legends esports, you should be watching this.
I would say this is the best esports show that I could see getting out of Hollywood.
Yes.
And like there's maybe more like documentaries you can get, but like straight scripted fiction show about esports. This is literally like they just added a fictional 11th team into the LCS and they're telling their story. And it's very authentic. It uses tons of personalities like us two and stuff. And so, I really like it.
Well, I think one of the things that I would say it is ironically more authentic than a lot of the documentaries that have come out about League of Legends esports. And I say that because the documentaries do a lot of like, they're like, okay, we're showing this to a mainstream audience. And this is really cool, and so they glamorize it a lot.
They want to build it up as something you should respect, so they just don't talk about the things that suck about the scene.
And they usually have to do it within like 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And so I think with this show, the creators are still going to make it something where they're like, you should respect this, but they can take a longer period of time to get there because they don't need to like, they can show like the really goofy parts of esports and not have to worry that like, well, if you watch all 10 episodes.
Well, yeah. I think a lot of the times too, gamers are generally defensive about like, we're not basement dwelling nerds, I swear. Even though there is a non-negligible subset of people who still are, even though there are the other end, like the Sven Skarens and the Golden Glues who are like fitness and like, streetwear people. And like there's this whole other side to esports. But I think sometimes people are afraid of the basement dwelling nerd trope because it is still real a little bit. And so I think what this show does well is they kind of show like that gamer house model that existed not that long ago in our past. And like there's a lot of these kinds of things that it taps into, but it does it authentically and not in a like, look at these losers way that everyone's like has high school fears of being bullied into. Agreed.
The trauma.
There
are collective trauma in esports. Okay. So without further ado, let's get into, we're going to talk about the first 4 episodes in this because they've released all 4. Future versions of the show will be shorter because we will be only talking about 1 episode at a time.
Yeah, and hopefully there'll be little time codes at the bottom for episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4.
Hopefully, but no promises.
All right, episode 1 starts now.
So we get into it, and they're really establishing the characters. We learn that Cream Cheese is a character who has gotten very close to lifting a trophy over the course of his career, but never gotten there, has been around since the beginning of esports. Or since the beginning of League Esports, and then you also have, and you learn also about sort of his foil character, which is the rookie organism.
And so it sets up very early on in the show that Cream Cheese has built this franchise himself, a la Hotshot and Reggie and like people like that. Him and his friends like made the team. It got bought out by investors. Like this is every team through franchising has gone through this process, and now upper management is making decisions and forcing it on him. And they bring in a 17-year-old Twitch streamer who hasn't really played competitive at all before to now be his starting AD carry. And even though the kid is cracked, has good mechanics and whatnot, there's obviously friction because it's like, what about the guy I wanted? What about my team? He still views it as his team, even though management's the ones making decisions.
And the owner of the team is the guy from Sacramento Kings, who's named Resnick, Nathan Resnick, I believe is his name, and he is very much a like suave, cool sports guy who doesn't really know what's up, but he sees ad dollars in Organism because Organism is a big streamer. I think we should blur 1 and 2 together in our recaps because it's hard for me to remember where 1 ends and 2 begins.
I think it basically ends with the first game where they lose.
They lose, right? Because he tries to make the solo play.
He tries to make the solo play with Grimace's dick, and then I like some of those lines kill me. That was a really good one.
Yes.
Yeah, it ends with that play, and basically is Cream Cheese being like, "Look, this kid sucks. I don't want him on my team." Right. And it's like
because the next episode starts with the Heimerdinger pick.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it might end. No, that's episode 2 that ends that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, really quickly on episode 1 before we get into it, I think before we get into episode 2, so that we can start to really hone in. I think episode 1 does a good job of establishing our main characters, and sort of pitting these characters against, beginning the tension between the two of them. You start to see the tension between ownership and what's going on there. I think you start to kind of talk about the differences in how much the scene has changed since you had some of these like the traditional sports owners coming in to start acquire stuff. And I don't know if you have any quick thoughts on 1 before we speed run into 2.
No, I think there's going to be a more meta conversation on the style of it being like sports documentary. I don't know if you want to do that now or at the end.
We can do it, I think, after we talk about the 4.
Okay. So I mean, episode 2 then.
Yes, episode 2. So I appreciate. I honestly think like they could have just made episode 1 like an hour-long episode where you have 1 and 2 together, because they really do. I understand why they released those 2 free on YouTube together, because I feel like you kind of need both of them to start to paint the full picture.
I don't mind how they did it though, because it keeps a nice pattern going of, at least for the first 3 episodes, taking a lens of one of the 3 main people on the team.
Yeah.
Because there's Cream Cheese, which is the first one, and you learn about him a little bit.
Yes.
And then you learn, okay, Organism comes in. But then episode 2 is titled Organism, and it's a lot more about his upbringing and where he came from and how he developed onto the scene.
Yes.
And so they have this dual timeline thing that's going on in the show where they'll bounce between 2021, which is the season where Organism's been introduced, in 2015, and like they kind of bounce around with Organism when he started getting good, which was like 2019, So they do a good job of keeping it all, make it all make sense for you.
So 2019, we learned that Organism played League on like a shitty computer
in a basement.
He got notoriety by beating Guru, which let's do a quick side tangent about
like how clearly certain characters are inspired by certain real life people.
Yes, and so Guru, a character that had previously been on the team in the really beginning, decided to on Fugitive had decided to like go off and stream on his own, and we learn a little bit why, I think, later on, if I recall.
I don't think we. No, episode 4 does get into it.
Episode 4 touches on it,
but we'll get there in a second.
So he has become a huge personality, streams to like 60K on Twitch, has his own podcast, and he gets bested by Organism in over the course of 3 solo queue games on stream, coincidentally. Freaks out, creates like a meme when Organism replies and says like, "It's okay, I still think that you're a good player."
Yeah,
and things start to go.
Yeah, so a couple meta comments on, or are we doing a review, or is this still recap?
No, we can.
So
okay. I think it can be fluid.
Okay, so to be fluid, I really like when they take the character or things that happen inspiration from real life things. So like, I really liked in this episode, like, it's kind of like Cutie Pie, who like left the team to become a streamer, excuse me. But then he's also got more the personality of like a Tyler One or a Ninja.
Yeah, or even Nate Shot. I feel like not in terms of personality, but when I'm seeing those he's like a former player that's got his podcast and he's providing all his commentary on stuff. Like, I feel like that's also a little Nate Shotty.
I mean, it's a lot of people. They all have podcasts. Like Cutie Pie had Beyond the Rift for a while. You know, like I think it's pretty heavily inspired by, I would guess, Cutie Pie retiring to go pro, but then also like Cutie Pie's not a heel, so they're willing to make him more like an asshole.
Yes.
So this character is like amalgamation. Like a lot of people are like amalgamations.
Yes.
Like obviously Cream Cheese is not directly Dardoch, but he is like heavily
some Dardoch, some of these other characters too. Yeah.
Yeah, because he is a huge shit talker to his own teammates and stuff.
Yeah.
And the creators of the show are very like, the first thing we watched to get into this scene was Breaking Point,
Yes.
So obviously there's heavy inspiration there, and you can pull so many events and people from like real life, either single events or like I said, crossovers.
Yeah, it is. Everything is a distillation.
Yeah.
They're like with Cream Cheese's story, and Braxton, who we haven't gotten to yet, like that is this distillation of many different things. You see, it's just
like management coming in,
yes, yeah.
why people get interested in the scene in the first place.
Yes.
They haven't confirmed it yet, but the owner has a daughter who's an influencer who is obviously more interested in the space than he is.
Heavily inspired by me, I believe, the interviewer, because she's a content creator. You don't know that? Oh, well, I mean, it's in the first episode. She goes and does an interview for her channel. I'm joking about it being inspired by me because clearly she's not.
I don't even remember this scene.
Oh yeah. She asked to do an interview with.
You sure it's not a collab?
Organism, I think it was for her channel. No,
she's
a content creator.
I know she's a content creator, but I don't think she asked to do an interview. I think she's just an influencer.
We'll pull it up on the.
I don't think she's an interview. I'll go back and look, but I think she's just an influencer. It's clearly inspired by Gravity. I think where like Gravity was like some rich kid's son who wanted to like League of Legends for a while and basically made his dad buy him a team, which is like very much.
Well, you say Gravity, but everybody like. Kyle, like Rick Fox got into it because of Kyle Fox.
Yeah, that's true.
Like there's so many instances where somebody got their rich parent into it, and then
anyway, so back onto episode 2.
Episode 2. So you see Guru makes Organism famous inadvertently. This is one of the few places where I felt like they've stretched what is reasonable in a couple different locations. I think for narrative reasons, which is fine, but like nobody's gonna like best somebody on stream 3 times in a row, and like suddenly it's this huge event.
So I think it can be in the right situation. I hate in modern movies where the answer is like just do something viral. I fucking hate this trope. It's all over the place. I was just watching Hustle. It's like a movie on Netflix about an NBA guy who's a scout who finds this player and like wants to believe in him.
Yeah.
And then like a bunch of shit goes wrong, and at some point they're like, "How are we going to get into the combine so that we can actually compete?" And they're like, "We'll just make a hashtag TikTok challenge and show off your skills while you beat street ball players." And it's the cringest shit ever, and it's all over modern movie making because they don't actually know how to like. It's like a MacGuffin plot, you know. It's go do the thing that solves the problem. It's social media. This one I will defend because it reminds me of things like you have no mana, freak. You know, like moments like that can make someone's career. Tyler 1 basically made a career off of
your microphone.
What about it? I'm yelling into it.
Okay.
The you have no mana, freak thing basically made Tyler 1's, or not made, like a lot of things contributed, but like that was one of the big first ones that was like made people laugh about.
Yeah,
that.
I guess I just like the way it's portrayed. So I can understand that I still think you're a good player, and like that popping off, I think that is realistic. But the way they portray it, it's like, and then they get into game 3. You know, it's not like people are going to be rushing to his stream because it's like he's playing against this random. Like people rage constantly about players in solo queue all the time. It's not like, oh my god. And also the idea that Guru is like this really good player. Like, if you're a content creator, you're not going to be best of the best because they're like, he lost 3 times in lane.
That part is where they stretched it a little bit.
And again, I don't have an issue with it, but I want to highlight these because there are so few of them, and when they do, I think it's for really reasonable narrative reasons. Whereas in other depictions of video game stuff, like, things will just not make sense for no reason at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the few times where I was like a little, as of someone who's deep in the scene, like, but again, there's a reason to do it. And it's honestly also not that far off. Like, people get blow up on other people's streams. Not Tomio. Well, Tomio as well, but Yukino Cat is like someone who like people are starting to take notice of because doing shit on someone else's stream. Like that dynamic of not known person does something on known person's stream and blows up is a fairly real thing that happens. So.
Yes. Okay, so what else happens in episode 2? So the Heimerdinger pick,
the Donger comes in,
which I think they did such a good job too. I mean, they overplay like the Donger thing a little bit, but it's because the actors, I think, do such a good job of landing the lines. Like he picked the Donger or whatever, and actually, I almost really appreciate the gameplay capture. Because the way
him
they
like waddling at the camera, like his walk is so funny.
Yes, and they just perfectly place it in. So I actually think that's really good.
That's one of the ones I thought was going to be cringe, but actually wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's a good point too. Is that there are a lot of places where something could be Like it's just on the edge of misexecution because it's such a tight narrow window to land it, and they landed
Another good example of that is like the internet reacting to this thing between Guru and Organism, where they have one of the show creators like talking about memes on the internet.
Yeah,
He's like, it's like the meme where this, and it's like the over explaining a meme joke, which could be cringe, wraps back around, and it's funny because they clearly know what they're doing.
For those that have not seen the creators, I did an interview with Tony and Dan plays the. He's not like the GM. He's
GM? Called GM or assistant GM or something, but like there's a couple staff people.
Right, yeah. And he's the one that does the explanation of the meme. So they picks Heimerdinger. The comp is... It's interesting because I've seen some people, and I'm not the analyst, but some people are like, this is actually a decent comp.
I think
which I thought was funny.
A lot of the writers are like either deep in the esports scene or like high rated enough that they can probably like be like like Jats was a consultant on this, and if they're like, hey, what's a team comp you'd play Heimer in, you know, like, or like what's the situation you would play him, they can just tap someone. So there's a lot of that stuff
and I was talking, so I went to the little pat on the back. Did you get invited to the thing last Friday?
Yeah, I just didn't go.
I knew it. I knew you were invited and you wouldn't go, but
I was working all 3 days this week.
Tony, one of the creators, held like a celebration party where they watched episodes 3 and episode 4 at the place, and then I just got to hang out with a bunch of the actors and the creators and folks and some other folks in the scene, and it was, I forget why we got on this topic.
I didn't bring it up.
Just for me to brag. Oh, I think we were talking about the draft or something.
Sure.
Oh, I was talking to Keen, who was one of the writers on it, as well as Elias and some of the other folks. Elias. Anyway,
I have to correct you because I always get it wrong. And it's just like passing the buck now. Like,
it's tough because I've always seen you guys at least get to hang out where people are using his name. I would just see his name written.
Yeah, you're good.
Both Riot folks who work on this, or worked on it in the writers' room, and so the reason I'm bringing this up is because there are, by necessity of the show, a lot of things you have to show in the show, like a draft. Or a jersey, or
some sort of play.
So there's just something you have to, a play in the game. There are just things that have to go into there naturally by the byproduct of your creating this. And so you have to make sure that those things all feel authentic, because even though they are not central to the show, people will pause and be like, what's the item build on this character, or something like that, or what is this play? Is this decent or whatever?
I think if you're watching critically, there are some plays.
There's a couple
plays that are pretty cringe, or like, you know, cringe in air quotes, where like only if you're really like being an asshole about it. The funniest one was I was watching Skara's stream while he was watching it, and there was one play where someone had 32,000 gold. Because they clearly were like in a custom game, like it was really funny. If like it's like that's the kind of stuff you need to be looking out for, or like, oh, this.
But you have to go so far in.
You have to like be like, oh, that Ezreal didn't Q when he could have Q'd to kill that guy. You know, it's like stuff like that where you're like, whatever.
But for the most part, like they have to. The folks working on this have to figure out ways to do this, and I think what is fun is that they still land it in a lot of places, or they will emulate a famous play that's existed previously. Or there's just, I think that's what's kind of fun too, is that you get a lot of references just because you have to figure out something to put in there, and so you're just going to pull it from something you already know.
Yeah.
Okay, so to wind down episode 2, we kind of end it
after the donger. Cream Cheese is like, F this, I want to trade. He demands a trade, and that's kind of where that episode ends.
Yes. A couple quick other things before we get to it. The thing about like spaghetti, I don't want to play with spaghetti, or yes, I would play with spaghetti again. That was so good because I think both Braxton and Cream Cheese, their actors, did such a good job in that moment of really selling you on the idea that there was this character named, like, it felt
the slow realization that like spaghetti was fucking terrible. And like, wait a minute, I prefer spaghetti.
Yes. That is like a scene from like, I swear to God, I've seen a conversation like that between Kelby and Peter in like 2013 or 2014 or something like that, where there's just this player who's like, oh, that player was dog shit, but I'd still rather play with them than this or whatever. Like that is for some of us, I think, especially those behind the scenes, it feels so authentic to something that could have happened. So I really love that scene. It's super good, I think.
Yeah. I really like that. I liked his whole calling the owner and like bitching him out, and like again, it's like stuff that is a little extra. But if you watch Breaking Point, there's a scene where like Dardoch and Steve were arguing, and like it's like obviously they take situations that could have happened and then they exaggerate it.
Right.
Like, some people in chat are talking about Cream Cheese storming off stage. It's like, I can't remember a time where a player did storm off.
They force quit games.
Yeah, they force quit games when they shouldn't have. They alt F4.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't shake hands. It's just like a little, like it's one step further.
Yeah. You up it once so that it's plausible. Like, I don't think it is like, because some people will be like, oh, that doesn't happen. I'm like, yeah, that doesn't happen, but could it? And I'm like, it is not implausible that somebody would storm off stage.
Yeah, game's ending. The Nexus hasn't quite exploded, but you know you win. People leave that situation all the time.
Yes.
He just physically left it because otherwise you would have to contextualizing alt F4ing the game before you quit.
Yes.
So like some concessions are being made to a general audience.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, even I think it's you're playing up this really dramatic moment that happens in LCS that hasn't happened yet, but I think could. Anyway, so the show ends. Another really quick scene, I just want to say, them trying to turn on the fucking fireplace.
Oh, so
it's
good.
Such a good, because it perfectly illustrates how bad pro players are at real life things.
Yeah.
They're so, I know that like the fans of League get these glimpses sometimes, you know, like burning the house down with the microwave, or like a lot of
one
things.
Getting scurvy.
Yeah, but like there are still to this day there are so many times where pro players are just like inept at the most basic things, and I love that scene because it has that in it.
Okay, so moving on to episode 3.
Yeah,
this was the one for me that really hooked me on the show, because up until this point it was mostly comedic and farcical. Though the characters and acting was all good and the writing was good. This is when they start pulling you in with like real character moments.
You start caring,
Yeah, and so some people in chat I saw saying that like, oh, my only problem is it's hard to root for Cream Cheese because he's an asshole based off the first 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Episode 3 is when you'll start actually caring about him a little bit.
Yes.
He's not going to never be an asshole, but you'll see a little bit more of where he's coming from, because this is the episode that follows Braxton.
Yes.
But in doing so, you follow the team's come up and how they actually became good.
So Braxton, show starts, Braxton's struggling to figure out what the hell he's going to do now that Cream Cheese is not
demanding
around.
A trade.
Yes, he's like, we've got a game against Evil Geniuses. I have to figure this out. We're going to pit in Cronklin.
The Cronklin shit was so fun.
So good. Because Cronklin also, I feel like it's the perfect, like, not ready, awkward nerd 17-year-old academy player that they've like picked up and they're being forced to play. And you see this time and time again in LCS too, where like the maybe the players have refused to play with a certain player. Like that is actually something that happens more frequently, I feel like, where you have a situation where people are like, I just don't want to play with this player anymore. And so they're bringing, or there's some sort of like hostility between two players, like the TSM stuff. I think, like with Shenyi, where it was somewhat implied that like there was bad beef there, and so things were going weird.
Yeah, something was happening. It doesn't have to be between players necessarily. And for some reason, you grab your academy player and you just jam them in, and they're just totally unprepared.
Yes, yes, it is such an LCS thing.
It's like we have absolutely no faith in you, but we need you to do it right now.
Yeah. And so there's the shot where it's like Braxton's going to him, and he's like, "You're ready. We all think you're ready. You're gonna be great." And then there's another shot where it's like, I guess they're putting him in. He's not ready at all, and that feels very authentic too. I love that.
Yeah. So they put in this kid. He sucks. The team's obviously upset that Cronklin's in.
Yeah.
And so there's. What I liked about this episode was how it kind of balanced all the other storylines that had been building.
Yes.
So
very well written episode.
Yeah, I really like this episode to the point where I almost start to dislike 4 a little bit because of some things in this that didn't pay off.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
But so basically, Cream Cheese leaves with Frugger, the guy who lost his job to Organism when they threw him in.
And he's kind of like Cream Cheese's like
boyfriend.
Like or pet or something.
Yeah. It's.
They go to buy the Porsche, which feels, again, like this is where they're like taking it exaggerating it a little bit.
Yeah.
But not too much, I think.
Yeah, so he... basically, he's trying to be like, I'm living my best life. He's going on Twitter. He's like making all these posts about like joining new teams. He's getting a new car. He's doing all these things to be like living large.
Yes. Shout out to the LCS music that they're listening to in the car.
That was so good. Funny. Yeah. There's just a lot of great lines in this episode too, comedically. Like, I think they can dock your pay for missing a game.
Like, no, I think it is me breaking contract.
Yeah, I think it's a breach of contract.
Breach of contract.
I was just thinking about that.
Yes,
There's a lot of great lines in this one. While this is happening, Braxton's also like working with the other members of the team to try and like calm them down.
Yeah.
while Cream Cheese is blowing off
he
steam.
takes I think a really notable moment, and I'm curious to see where this goes, is Braxton takes Organism out in the car, makes the 3D Doritos analogy, but is basically saying like,
I don't like you,
or like you should not be playing. Like it's a moment where he's like, you're in the LCS and you're not ready.
Yeah, and
you should be on Academy. And I think like that's a really
strong thing for a coach to say to a player.
Yes, and I'm not sure if it's the right move. Like it is. So I was going to say this towards the end of this episode, but I want to say it now. I think this episode does a lot for Braxton. I think he makes Braxton, in my mind, the most likable character in the show, and I think it does it makes him kind of like the everyman in some way, and it shows how much he's sacrificing.
Kind of, yeah.
It shows how much he's sacrificing, because I think this is the episode where they show that he like roll swaps so that they can get
Foresight into the ball.
Foresight in,
who's basically a double lift Bjergsen combination.
Right. And it shows him trying to manage this stuff. I think it's cool. I really like. I don't normally care a lot about this stuff, but like I really like that it shows him as a father. Like this scene where they've got the daughter,
married,
named Aurelia, but I think that is like really humanizing. And so at this point in time, I think Braxton is like, one, my favorite character, and two, like he's just the good character in the show. Like you have Cream Cheese, who's just an asshole, and Organism is also kind of an asshole.
He's not an asshole, but he's just like the kind of stereotypically maladjusted new pro who's like so introverted that they almost can't speak.
Yeah, but he
he phrases things poorly.
He's not very likable.
Yeah,
and that's one criticism I've seen of the show from people who don't like it, is that they're saying that there's not very many likable characters. But I think Braxton is one. I don't care. I like the non-likable characters, but I think Braxton is the likable character in this. But I think the moment where I am happy that they showed that scene with him and Organism in the car, because I think it's a fuck up moment for him. You know, he's not just like the guy who's trying. It's like, I think that's not what he should have done.
I agree. That felt a little weird to me, especially given, like, we'll get more in episode 4.
Yeah.
The other thing that happens in this episode while all this is going on is you get a bunch of flashbacks to the teams come up. Honestly, it's not particularly noteworthy if you are familiar with the Challenger scene in 2015. So it's more context for other people, but like the idea of 5 friends get together, move into a house, make it into the pro scene, their team gets bought, you know, like everyone's been there a little bit. It's the only thing would be that they were like really popular, which wasn't really true for Challenger teams.
Right.
But again, it's a acceptable, I think, narrative beat that
so one of the other things here that I don't like as much is the Axe Bros like montage. That was a little too much for me.
It went on a little long.
Yeah.
I mean, not every joke lands, and that was one where I was definitely like, all right, we can get on from the Axe Bros faster.
But because I like the show so much, I want to also do a decent job of pointing out areas where I think it doesn't land.
Yeah, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
But I think the payoff for the Axe Bros is utilized well with the pass moment.
Yeah.
When we were watching in the crowd the premiere at the LCS studio, a couple people like cringed audibly. They were like, oh, they like groaned because they didn't know where that plot point was going. And so it was definitely funny to see that.
You establish them, then we see Cream Cheese tweet, and I love whoever was the person who was like, he should just reply with pass. Like pass is such a good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's so good. It establishes that Cream Cheese isn't as hot as he thinks he is, and like is like a big reality check moment for him, and like humanizes him. And that's like where the humanization starts in this episode, is he gets like taken down a peg by his former teammate. Then he has the scene where he goes to the house, and you're seeing how good of a friend he kind of is with Braxton.
Yeah.
And you got the whole history from them from the flashback, and now like he was the best man at their wedding, and you see that he's not just a total shithead.
Yes.
And like he kind of comes back around and is not going to quit the team anymore.
Yes. I don't know why Braxton is burning things to CDs. That was a little or DVDs, but
I thought that joke was so funny. Actually.
You liked it?
The joke about a tradition that only existed for 10 years.
Yeah. Okay. I liked it. The line about this. Oh yeah, this only existed.
I think they were making fun of it. Yeah. Like, I don't know. It's like Walkman. You know, Walkman only existed for a very specific subset of people.
But that scene, I also want to give a shout out to. I think Braxton's wife is named April. I want to say.
really good in it.
The actress is really good in that role, and like I want to point it out because she is not playing in any of the leading roles, and I feel like that type of character, because she's mostly there to support like Braxton and folks, like I think it's easy to overlook how good that actress does.
Well, someone in chat just pointed this out, and I totally agree. The convo between her and Cream Cheese when Braxton's putting his child to sleep and she's trying to like level with him and be like, if you fuck this up, he's gonna be out of a job.
Yes.
You know, like, because there's gonna rebuild and he's not gonna survive a rebuild. And like all those lines I think are human lines. They're good like world building lines in a sense that like this is not so farcical.
It's
that,
setting
like,
some stakes.
Yeah. Like I thought that was
and the relationship between the three of them, I think, comes across like it's really well written and really well acted. Like that, I think that whole sequence of the apartment, them going out to the Porsche, them like coming in and Braxton being like, I could get a Porsche. Like it feels very human. All it feels so human.
I think that scene is one of the best because it's easy to be like over the top ridiculous, but to be like monotone everyday ridiculous when they're arguing about like if Braxton could pull off a Porsche or not. Like all that feels like real people talking.
You spend so much time in these like really dramatic haha like in that episode you have like Axe Bros stuff, you have buying the Porsche, you have all these scenes that are so over the top.
Yeah.
And to sort of wind down the episode with that, which feels very human, I think is really good. And then on the other side, you have Organism hanging out with Nathan and
his daughter. Yeah.
You see these and what my impression was like these were kind of two teams setting the stakes for like what you're going to see. I know we're going to dive into episode 4 next, but I wanted like to pause here because this is you and I saw 1 through 3.
Yeah.
And then we watched 4 only recently because they showed the first 3. And I do think like 1 through 3 is kind of like the first arc of the show. That's what it feels like, is you've established the stakes, you've established everything. And so I think this is kind of a good checkpoint to talk about a couple things.
Okay.
Which is, I think I really like, I feel like these are our 3 main characters, Cream Cheese, Organism, and Braxton.
Yep.
I think they're all really good. And I think it all feels really realistic. And at this point in time, I really liked where the show was going.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't really have too much to add on to that. I guess I'll add on that I like the insert characters as well because there's a lot of people playing themselves, like me and you, where they're cutting in and
very
chat.
Very brief cameos.
Yeah, a lot of cameos of people just basically being themselves.
Yeah.
But shout out to Youngbin and Arrow, and I always forget his name.
Miko,
yeah. They are all really good as well. Youngbin had some killer lines like that's one of the coolest sentences I've ever heard, and I've heard a lot of sentences. Yeah.
Yes.
And like also when he kicks out the table and then Youngbin walks over and just starts stomping on chips randomly.
Yeah.
Like
that was such a good moment.
Yeah.
Arrow having so many good lines where he's like, "You picking Heimerdinger?" You know, like it's super. It's so funny because I think a lot of fans probably did not realize how much personality Arrow has, and he just like kills it in this, which is pretty cool. Youngbin was at the thing on Friday, and it was super fun to talk to him and catch up with him. He's vibing. He's like, I never would have expected I would be like doing acting or whatever, and I think he's pretty interested in it now, and so he wants to continue to.
I mean, he was
try
good.
to do some more stuff, which is neat. Cool. Okay, so I guess we can dive into
episode 4.
Episode 4.
So this is the first one I have any serious criticism about beyond like some jokes not landing or maybe something being a little too exaggerated.
Yeah.
So episode 3 ends in a really hype way for me, where you have this Braxton scene that we're talking about, and then at the same time, the Resnick with Organism scene, which we didn't talk as much about, is basically Organism being like, oh, I don't know, maybe I should go to Academy. I just want to do what's best for me.
Yeah, because he's like, Braxton thinks I shouldn't be playing. Yeah.
And Resnick hears this, and he's basically like, fuck that. This team is all about you, and I will fire anyone who disagrees with you, is basically what he says.
Yeah.
And that set huge stakes because on the other conversation, it was basically him being like, don't worry, Cream Cheese, Braxton is saying this. I'll sort this out. And so I thought for sure like Braxton's head was on the chopping block. This was going to be a big explosion of some kind. And episode 4 just completely sidesteps the issue. They advanced the timeline like 4 weeks. So now it's much further into the season. You know, like episode 4 just starts 3 or 4 weeks later. Which,
I had not noticed that time skip.
Yeah, they went in from like being 1-4 in the regular season to like 4-8. You know.
Yeah.
and the other episode ended with Cream Cheese coming back into the house. So you thought there would be a big blow up scene of like Cream Cheese and Organism talking again, or management, like this big like sticky situation that you just painted in the last episode. And time advances 4 weeks, and then Resnick loses his job because the Kings are sucking.
Yeah. And
then no one knows what's going on. And so like they just like sidestep the issue by being like, look at all this tension. Resnick's gone. It's fine.
Yeah. I agree. Like I would have liked to have seen. You never really got to see the clash between Braxton and Resnick. That I think would have been very interesting because, I like that like traditional sports versus esports like clash. Them both having like tension between. I thought that would have been pretty cool. So I was kind of surprised. I think he will be back in some capacity because his daughter seems relevant. Like they seem to be doing stuff. It doesn't seem like they're going to both get written off, but
it also like I think the reason was fine. Like very much.
That feels very real. So for folks that don't know, this shit happens all the time. So like CLG, there was a guy named Jordan Solomon who like managed like the CLG MSG acquisition, and then he just got I think canned like pretty quickly after like the franchising stuff hit or whatever, and then suddenly there was like a completely different person who's running it, and so
I think it happened with Clutch as well. I don't know if Daryl Morey got fired or
no,
if
he ended up
leaving, and then like he was the one who believed in esports, and
the ownership group of the Rockets changed too to become like there was a situation where like the previous owner had acquired the spot and was in on esports, and then like the new guy Fertitta, I think it was not as big on it.
Either way, like the big ownership groups having changes of some kind, fucking over the little esports org has happened a lot in the
and you know what? Like it's interesting to think about it because I don't think we do a good enough job of communicating that to the regular like on Hotline League or talking.
Why
about
did Immortal sell?
Yeah, like fans don't know as much of this stuff. I think, and so. We need to maybe do a better job of it, but that felt very realistic. But I agree that it like suddenly skews things. I do like that I liked that scene though, where you suddenly have Cream Cheese being like, "Fuck it, we're good." Like Frogger's back. Like he calls Frogger in and is like, "Dude, like look at the news. This is amazing." And like you're like that was it was great because it was such a chaotic scene, but everybody's doing such a great job in it. Of like. Everybody's there's this moment of panic from some, from like ecstasy from others, and it's all in this one room.
Yeah, and the other people are like, Cream Cheese, shut the fuck up because someone else is going to buy the team. We don't own it. And he's like, what if we just bought it? And they're like, it's worth $35 million, you idiot. You can't just buy the team.
I'm curious if Guru's going to buy it.
He said it. I think that was just a throwaway joke, but I hope.
But it felt if it was a throwaway joke, it felt authentic because that's definitely something I feel like you could see. And like that would be fascinating if they now have to deal with Guru because he's obviously a bit of a jerk. But
I just wouldn't like it from an authenticity angle because there's no.
Well, you could see a world like if he goes and raises money, that is not unusual.
It's not unusual, but it's never happened in League.
Nate Shot
was backed by a bunch of. It's not quite the same.
I'm just saying if it is, I don't think it is very unreasonable. I think it would be pretty classic. To see Guru be like, oh, like maybe Resnick will come back and buy the team with Guru's backing, because you see oftentimes where you get like the personality plus the money. I could see that.
Yeah,
happening.
If he's a front, if Guru's a front for like a larger ownership group, maybe front's not the right word, but like a figurehead, whatever. Yes. Maybe that'll work, but not just Guru himself.
No, I don't think it would just be Guru himself, but like you could see something like that happen. I mean, Mr. Beast has been talking about getting in for a while,
like 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he will at some point,
but he's always on the edge. So
anyways, back onto episode 4. The other thing that happened was there a flashback about like again something that you're probably not going to be unfamiliar with if you follow the scene, but the team getting bought out by ownership was covered. A bunch of young kids making a dumb play for fast money and losing out on dozens of millions.
Yeah, I think that was really good.
Yeah. And like them like celebrating, and funnily enough, Guru's like one of the few people who gets it, who's like, no, we are not millionaires. You have to split that money, and we just lost millions of dollars in the future. You fucking idiots.
Yes.
Like.
And Foresight, I'm really curious because I don't think that episode goes into like Foresight was the one that pushed them to sell.
Him and Cream Cheese wanted to sell right away.
Well, Cream Cheese said he was kind of down. Cream Cheese went along with it because Forsythe was threatening to leave.
Maybe it's a cop out. Maybe I'm reading between the lines too much, but it feels like him not wanting to admit he's an idiot kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it was literally like Forsythe pushed Cream Cheese and was like, because they're like the duo, and he's like, I'm gonna leave. But then this episode does not get into it. I've not seen the future episodes, but I hope it gets into the fact that like he forces them to sell and then leaves and goes and wins a shit ton with TSM.
At some point, he has to leave soon because they said he won 6 titles. And, like theoretically, you can do that in 3 years. But like, there obviously is going to be a moment. There's more coming that you can see coming because like, Forsythe has to leave the team and he's making big decisions with the team.
Right.
So
I thought that was pretty good, and I'm excited to see where that goes because I think it's going to be compelling.
Yeah.
And then that scene. The scene, we're kind of jumping all over the place, but back to where we were. So they decide to run Organism for the weekend, and then they're going to put Frogger in. And then they go out there and they lose. And they go back into the room, the practice room, and Braxton just fucking lays into Cream Cheese. I thought that was a really good moment. I thought the acting in it was awesome. I loved Organism's brother in the back being like, that's right.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
And you have, he turns to, is it Youngbin? Where he
turns to one of the real bros.
Yeah. And it's like, why did you guys lose? And he's like, well, you did do this, Cream Cheese or whatever. And then you have that moment where Organism is like, you did this at this point, this level. I thought that monologue was really good.
I thought they did a good. I had known there's some story beats I know are coming because I worked on the show. And
spoilers.
Same for you.
I don't know any of the other spoilers.
I'm not going to spoil anything.
I'm not
going to spoil anything, but I'm just saying like I knew that the story beat were like you learn that Organism actually is smart about the game and not just a mechanical beast. I thought that scene played better than I thought it was when I was like being told about it.
Yeah.
The way he listed the points off was pretty, I don't know, authentic feeling to me.
Yeah.
And so I thought that did a good job of selling that like he's still a shitty communicator, but there's more to work with there than the team thinks. So I thought this episode did a great job. You're talking about the acts. Act 1 is all about establishing the conflict. Act 2 you can tell is going to be about them eventually like enemies to lovers kind of story.
Sure.
Because the way episode 4 ends is they end up losing this important game that leads to this big blow up. So they're knocked out of playoffs.
But they start winning.
They start winning a little bit. And then everyone leaves the house for the off season except for Cream Cheese and Organism, who are like going at it in the house.
Yeah. Going at it.
They are antagonistic towards each other over cereal. Like you're chewing your cereal too fucking loud. Pick a new cereal. Like,
yes.
So obviously there's going to be more conflict in this second arc, but I also assume it's when they actually start respecting each other a little bit.
Well, and I think it's interesting because Cream Cheese, I liked this episode for the like rapid changes that are happening underneath Cream Cheese. Where like in the very beginning of the show, it's like, okay, he's back, he's got his tail between his legs, he fucked up. Then Resnick is gone, so then he thinks he's like he's basically running the team at that. He thinks it's his team, he's running it. Like he has that conversation with Braxton where he's like, it's our team. And then immediately like he gets put back into his place again. So there's just such a ping pong for him in terms of these comeuppances. So I think it's really good. I like this. I liked episode 4 a lot. I agree that I was a little disappointed in the lack of payoff between what it seemed like they were setting up at the end of episode 3. But I think it's really good. And I think with episode 4, we're really it was towards the end of episode 3 where I started to actually care about the characters and what was happening beyond like, haha, this is funny.
Yeah.
But episode 4 I think is where I'm like really invested in the plot line. You know what I mean? I'm like, what is going to happen?
I think I assumed that they would get better faster. So the fact that they failed early and now they're in the house together, that was also to me interesting because it's like, oh, this is not like and then we work together and we're great, like there's gonna have to be real.
Well, I'm also just invested in like the hints that they're dropping. Like the ownership group they're like, we don't know what's going on with them and what's like, so it seems like something's gonna happen there. April is running the the thing. Is it April?
Yeah, April's running the team right now.
April's running the team, and so you're like, okay,
but
what's
new buyers
happen
are coming
there?
at some point.
Yes. There's just a lot of hints being dropped at the future, which I find really interesting. The foresight, like I'm invested in the story around what's going to happen with foresight in the past.
I hear that there's more exploration of the side characters as well, like with the fact that it's a 10-episode season, and you know the main two characters pretty well at this point. I hear there's more time given to other side characters like Youngbin and Arrow and stuff, so I'm looking forward to seeing like those scenes as well.
So I am but anyway, I think just to kind of wrap this up, really like the show. Think they're doing such a great job with it. Actors, I think, are killing it. The writing is great. I am curious to see how this is received by a general audience, because I worry that it's almost a little too for League fans, and I've yet to learn enough about. Like, I recommended it to my dad, or I asked him to watch it. I'm going to pull up what he said to me. Here. So I said to him, "Hey, you should watch this," and I sent him the link, and then I asked him what he thought of it, and I said, "Are you going to watch it?" He said, "Yes, I started to yesterday. It's humorous. I like the player names." So that's where we're at so far. I haven't bugged him again because I'm trying to be nice, but we'll see if he decides to watch more than like an episode of it or something.
I think it's one of those things where it's so hard to judge. I think there's some things when like you're a Wheel of Time fan can maybe they can't divorce themselves from watching the adaptation Wheel of Time from like, they changed this about the book, you know, like as a League
they
fan,
were very bitter about it.
I still don't think it was a good show, so maybe not the best example. Like Lord of the Rings, hardcore Lord of the Rings fan hate actually the end of the third movie. But it's fucking great. Go fuck yourselves. You're too caught up in the original material to see that like this is good too. That's how I couldn't feel about this, where I'm like this is so good as someone in the scene, but I'm like, does anyone care?
Yes. Well, and I think there's a spectrum, right? So like I was talking to the creators on Friday, and they really want traditional sports fans, because they are traditional sports fans. They love traditional sports docs. And they're like, they're like, how can we get people who would normally watch like Last Dance to watch this show? And because those are the people that I think they actually, I think they're happy to create it for us, but I think they're like, well, they came into this originally as traditional sports fans wanting to mock those docs. So I think that'll be interesting. But I also am just like, I want this to break. Like, CS:GO fans should go watch this. Like, I want other esports fans to get into it.
I think this is the kind of documentary that anyone in esports can watch and get, even if you don't understand the specifics from the League references. I assume every scene is similar enough that there'll be characters that you can find parallels to. That whole general audience angle, there's also the can of worms of how the release was handled, which you have gone on enough about that we don't want to tack it on at the end of a 40-minute review. Maybe you can do at some point.
People are going to go listen to me on Hotline League rant about it. I talked about how I felt like they didn't market a great job.
So I do think that's true, though. And the reviews I have seen, because I was keeping up with like Hollywood Reporter and things, like more or less everyone seems to be enjoying it with like nitpicks of other kinds. And some people have seen the whole 10 episodes, so like who knows how it'll hold up throughout.
I could go watch all 10 episodes right now. I have all the screeners, but I've decided that I'm only going to watch them as they come out so that we can do this content.
I didn't.
Well, you're not. Anyway, whatever.
Go to a birthday party.
So this is our episode. Anything else that you think we're forgetting? Twitch chat, let us know. We're streaming this live, by the way. I guess we didn't even address that we were doing that.
We talked to Chad enough times.
People. I realize.
No, I think that's it. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why are you rushing out?
I know you have to go.
I've got a meeting.
We want to talk, and I know you have a meeting.
Yeah. When does the next batch come out? It drops on Wednesday at midnight?
It's one episode a week. It's not batch.
Yeah, but I'm trying to. Yeah, it's not a batch, but I'm trying to remember when the episodes drop weekly. Oop.
I think it's Wednesday. They came out on a Wednesday, I think, or a Thursday.
Donut says, I'm definitely in the target audience, but I've seen like 30 ads for players myself on Twitch, YouTube, etc. So the marketing gripe falls short for me. I don't think you're the target audience. I think they want this to go mainstream. If they're not just targeting, if you are somebody who's watching a Travis Gafford Twitch channel, I don't think that you are like the main target audience.
Well, your target audience in the sense that like they expect the show to appeal to you, but like there's not enough of you to make the show a success.
Yeah.
I don't think the league scene alone can make this a success.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back with another episode where we'll talk about episode 5 next week. See you next time.